Hello, people of the internet. If you're here, you're probably here to figure out how to increase the capacity of your Wii U Gamepad battery, which now, 7 years old, is ailing and probably hardly even charges. So in this video, you will need a 4500 milliamp lithium ion battery, 3.7 volts, and you'll need to have the ability to solder, and it's just 2 wires. So hopefully you will enjoy this video. Hopefully you'll be able to enjoy 10 plus hours of battery life on your Wii U gamepad and enjoy a pretty unknown console. I'll say the Wii U wasn't that well known. It was a flop in all nature, but it has some unique titles that I think are worth a try. So if you can get your hands on a cheap Wii U for probably sub $100, it's worth getting a Wii U instead of the Switch because the games are exceedingly cheap now these days. So what spurred this little battery mod? It was because my Wii U battery or my Wii U gamepad seemed to charge sometimes and then not charge other times, and its battery was only lasting about an hour long. So I bought a new charger and a new battery just in case, and turns out it was the adapter. The original adapter was dead. So what I did was I took it and I spliced it to a USB cord right there. That's what you're seeing, because the USB cord puts out at about the same voltage and the same amps. Then what I did was I took out the old OEM battery and I realized there is 4 cords connected to it, and it's a lithium cell, 3.7 volts. And then when you open it, there's actually this weird PCB on the inside, which I think the gray and the white wires are attached to maybe some sort of temperature gauge or information sending to the console to tell you how charged the battery is. So maybe it's a BMS. So what I did was I took the red and black wires of this other lithium cell that's a lot larger, so 4,500 milliamps versus 1,500 milliamps, and I just attached the red wire to the positive and the black wire to the negative. So what you're seeing me do right now is you're seeing me test the OEM battery to make sure that the positive's red wire is where I think it is. So that's what I just did, and right now I'm testing continuity. You should hear a beep on your continuity check to make sure that, and I'm doing this to make sure that I send the positive out to the Wii U gamepad where it's supposed to go, because if you reverse polarity, you could blow a fuse, and that would just take extra time. So now what I'm about to do is cut the new lithium cell that I'm trying to attach, and you see me split them apart because you don't want to make the mistake of cutting them at the same time, since you will bridge the connection with the metal scissor, and that will cause a short circuit. And now what I'm doing is I'm carefully checking the polarity of that battery just to make sure that the negatives and the positive colored wires are actually wired that way, since it is a battery probably made in China. So I just want to make sure that the positive and negatives are actually positive and negative and not swapped, because sometimes batteries of that nature are swapped. So now what I'm doing is I'm actually taking off the little PCB that's attached to the OEM battery, and what I'm doing is I'm just going to again check continuity, and then I'm going to desolder the wire, or I'm gonna actually solder the new battery wire on to that PCB. And I had a little bit of trouble dealing with it since it is so teeny, but I just wanted to be careful to make sure that what I was wanting to solder to was the correct place, because again, it creates more work for me if I solder to the wrong joint and then I plug it into my Wii U and I blow a fuse, or I fry the motherboard. So I just didn't want that happening. And now what you're seeing me doing is I am actually tinning all the joints. That's just a soldering technique where you kind of put a layer of solder on it already, and that actually just helps with the joint. It helps it create a stronger and an easier connection, because I just didn't want to heat up the lithium battery too much. So I just wanted to tap the solder joint just barely, because it's bad to heat lithium batteries up. And now what I'm doing is I am securing the wire and stripping the black negative side, and I'm going to be attaching that with to the negative black to the negative black wire. What you just also saw was me putting flux on it. Flux is super important for creating strong and good solder joints. It helps with the heat transfer along with creates an easier joint. So you get less chance of a cold solder joint or a joint that isn't electrically conductive. But what you will notice here in a few minutes is I'm checking again for the voltage, and I realize it's at 0, and I'm wondering why. And oddly, the solder tab that was connected to the OEM battery on the negative was for some reason not conductive. So what I have to do then is I have to desolder it from that solder tab, and I'm now soldering the negative wire directly to the negative pin on that PCB. So I was just being very careful with it, and now I'm checking again the voltage to make sure that the voltage is in the correct polarity or the correct format, because I don't want to plug it into the Wii U backwards, because that'll fry a circuit most likely, or blow a fuse most likely. So I'm checking that again. And then what you're going to start seeing here is you're going to see me plug it in, and there we go. The battery is indeed working, but I realized my console wasn't on, so I couldn't check to see what the charge was. What I'm doing now is I am wrapping all the exposed joints with Kapton tape, because Kapton tape is non-conducive and it's a lot less sticky than electrical tape. And now what I'm doing is I'm using some double-sided phone tape, like for phone screens, LCD screens, to secure the battery so it doesn't slide around. The battery actually is about 10 millimeters tall, about 50 millimeters wide, and about 70 millimeters long, and it fits pretty perfectly in there actually, because the OEM battery is about 11 millimeters. Excuse me if I did say centimeters, but I meant millimeters. So now it's secured, and I'm just making sure the wires are all in and shaking it upside down to make sure it doesn't fall out, and I'm screwing it back up, and there you have it. You have a console, which is great. This new battle is working swimmingly. It has been on at 3 brightness out of 5 with full volume on and rumble pack on power saver mode, of course, for 3 hours playing games, and the battery gauge is still at full. So I gotta figure this battery could last between 10 to 15 hours easily, because the battery gauge hasn't even decreased. So I'd say it was a success. My Wii U battery went from working for an hour to maybe 15 at the most. Pretty good.